Hello everybody, let's carry on with James and Giant Peach. And you will recall that they are in a bit of a pickle. They thought they'd got away from the cloud men, and then what happens? They get caught up in a rainbow. The cloud men are furious because they break the rainbow. They're throwing everything they've got up on their clouds, step ladders and tins of paint and snowballs and hailstones and all sorts. At one point, one of the cloud men actually climbed down one of the ropes. That was getting a bit scary, wasn't it? And at the last minute, James just cut the thread, and the seagull that was tied to the end of that thread flew away with the cloud man attached. It was quite strong, these seagulls, wasn't they? So, will they escape from the rest? Let's find out, and let's see whether they're going to finally make it all the way across the ocean and find somewhere safe to stay. So chapter 29. It seemed like a long time before the seagulls were able to pull the peach away from that horrible rainbow cloud. But they managed it at last, and then everybody gathered around the wretched centipede and began arguing about the best way to get the paint off his body. Can you remember what colour had the centipede ended up? One of the cloudmen threw a pot of paint. It landed all over the centipede, and he ended up top to toe purple. He really did look a sight. He was purple all over, and now the paint was beginning to dry and to harden. He was forced to sit very stiff, as if he'd been covered in cement. And all 42 of his legs were sticking out straight in front of him, like little rods. He tried to say something, but he couldn't, because his mouth was full of paint. All he could do was make gurgling noises in his throat. The old green grasshopper reached out and poked him in the stomach. But how could it possibly have dried so quickly? He asked. Well, it's rainbow paint, James answered. Rainbow paint dries very quick and very hard. I don't know how James knew that. I detest paint, Miss Spider announced. It frightens me. It reminds me of Aunt Spiker. The late Aunt Spiker, I mean, because the last time she painted her kitchen ceiling, my poor darling grandmother stepped into it by mistake when it was still wet, and there she stuck. And all through the night we could hear her call and say, help, help, help. It was heartbreaking, but we couldn't help her. What could we do? And not a thing until the next day when the paint had dried. Then, of course, we all rushed over her to see if we could help her. But we couldn't. She was stuck. She lived there forever and ever, stuck in the paint. They used to feed her every day. They'd catch things in their spider's web and then take it over and feed her and so on and so on. So poor old spider. And then, in fact, on the 26th, oh right, so she stayed there and everything was right. And then on the 26th of April, Aunt Sponge, the late Aunt Sponge, happened to glance up at the ceiling and spotted, said, a spider! A disgusting spider! Quick, fetch me the mop with a long handle. Then she squashed Miss Spider's grandmother. That's a terrible thing to do. There is never a need to kill spiders. Sometimes we get a bit frightened about spiders. I think we talked about this at the beginning of the story, didn't we? Spiders in this country are not scary. What I do is I have a pot, and if I need to get a spider outside, because sometimes Mrs. Barton gives the open, I don't like that spider, get rid of it. So I put the pot over the spider, then I put a piece of card underneath, and then I lift it up, a piece of card with the pot on the top, and the spider is inside. And then I take it downstairs and I put it outside. So there's never ever a need to kill spiders. And there's loads and loads in this country, all different sorts. And some are tiny and some are white and some got very fancy. And in the autumn, when you get all the cobwebs, have a look at a spider and a cobweb. It is beautiful. So do not be frightened of spiders in this country. So Miss Spider wiped away a tear and looked sadly at the centipede. You poor thing, she murmured. I do feel sorry for you. It'll never come off, the earthworm said brightly. Our centipede will never move again. He will turn into a statue, and we shall be able to put him in the middle of the lawn with a bird bath on top of his head. I think the earthworm thinks it's very funny, because centipede was never very nice to him, was he? We could try peeling him like a banana, the old green grasshopper suggested. Or rubbing him with sandpaper, the ladybird said. Now, if he stuck out his tongue, the earthworm said, smiling a little for perhaps the first time in his life, if he stuck it out really far, then we could all catch hold of it and start pulling. And if we pulled hard enough, we could turn him inside out and he would have a new skin. Do you know, I don't think that's very helpful, do you? The others paused and thought about it and thought, no. I think, James says, I think the best thing to do. Then he stopped. What was that? He asked quickly. I heard a voice. I heard someone shouting. They all raised their heads, listening. Shh, there it is again. But the voice was too far away from them to hear just what it was saying. It's a cloud man, Miss Spider cried. I just know it's a cloud man. They're after us again. It came from above, the earthworm said, and automatically everybody looking upward, everybody except the centipede, who couldn't move. Ouch, they cried. They said, help, mercy, we're going to catch it this time. For what they now saw, swirling and twisting directly over their heads, was an immense black cloud, a terrible, dangerous, thundery-looking thing that began to rumble and roar, even as they were staring at it. Then, from high up on the top of the cloud, the faraway voice came down to them once again, this time very loud and very clear. Do you think it's the cloud men, and they brought a rain cloud this time? On with the taps, they shouted, on with the taps. And 3 seconds later, the whole underneath of the cloud seemed to split and just seemed to open, and out came water, gallons and gallons and gallons and gallons of water. They saw it coming quite easily because it wasn't just raindrops. In fact, it wasn't raindrops at all. It was a great solid mass of water. It might have been a lake or a whole ocean, dropping out of the sky on top of them, and down it came, down and down again, crashing first onto the seagulls, because the poor old seagulls are up front in the head, aren't they? And in fact, you can see it, they look just crashing down on them. And then onto the peat itself, while the poor travellers shrieked with fear and groped around frantically for something to catch hold of. The peach stem, the silk strings, anything they could find, and all the time the water was pouring and roaring down upon them. It was bouncing and smashing and sloshing and slashing and swashing and swirling and surging and whirling and gurgling and gushing and rushing and rushing. And it was like being pinned down underneath the biggest waterfall in the world and not being able to get out. They couldn't speak, they couldn't see, they couldn't breathe. And James Henry Trotter, holding on madly to one of the silk strings above the peach stem, told himself this must surely be the end of everything at last. But then, just as suddenly as it started, the deluge stopped. They were out of it, and it was all over. The wonderful seagulls had flown right through it. They're probably quite used to flying through rain clouds, aren't they? And they come out safely on the other side. Once again, the giant peach was sailing peacefully through the mysterious moonlit sky. I am drowned, gasped the old green grasshopper, spitting out water by the pint. It's gone right through thy skin, the earthworm cried. I always thought my skin was waterproof, but it isn't, and now I'm full of rain. Look at me, shouted the centipede excitedly. It's washed me clean, the paint's all gone, I can move again. That's the worst news I have ever heard, said the earthworm. The centipede was dancing round the deck and turning somersaults in the air and singing at the top of his voice. Oh, hooray for the storm and the rain, I can move, I don't feel any pain, and now I'm a pest, I'm the biggest and best, the most marvellous pest once again. Oh, do shut up, the old green grasshopper said. Look at me, cried the centipede, look at me, I am freed, I'm freed, not a scratch, nor a bruise, nor a bleed. To his grave this fine gent that you thought they had sent, but I very nearly went, oh, I very near went, but they sent quite the wrong centipede. How fast we're going all of a sudden, the ladybird said. I wonder why. Maybe the seagulls don't like this place any better than we do, James answered. I imagine they want to get out of it as soon as they can. They got a bad fright in that storm we've just been through. Faster and faster the seagulls flew, skimming across the sky at a tremendous pace with the peach trailing behind them. Maybe they're being chased by something. Maybe they're frightened. Who knows? Cloud after cloud went by on either side of them, all of them ghostly white in the moonlight. And several more times during the night, the travellers caught glimpses of cloud men moving around on the tops of these clouds, working their sinister magic upon the world below. Once they passed a snow machine in operation, with the cloudmen turning the handle and a blizzard of snowflakes blowing out of the great funnel above. They saw the huge drums that were used for making thunder, and the cloudmen beating them furiously with long hammers. Do you know, I didn't know how all these things happened, did you? They saw the frost factories. They saw the wind producers. They saw the place where cyclones and tornadoes were manufactured. They're very, 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 very strong winds, aren't they? And sent spinning down towards the earth. And once, deep in the hollow of a large, billowy cloud, they spotted something that could only have been a cloudmen's city. There were caves everywhere running into the cloud. And at the entrances to the caves, not claves, are they, silly me? To the caves, the cloudmen's wives were crouching over little stoves with frying pans in their hands, frying snowballs for their husbands' suppers. And hundreds of cloudmen's children were frisking about all over the place and shrieking with laughter and sliding down the billows of the cloud on toboggans. An hour later, just before dawn, the travellers heard a soft whooshing noise above their heads, and they glanced up and saw an immense grey bat-like creature swooping down towards them out of the dark. It circled round and round the peach, flapping its great wings slowly in the moonlight and staring at the travellers. Then it uttered a series of long, deep, melancholy cries, that means they're very sad, and flew off again into the night. And there you can see, like a huge bat, can't you? This huge grey shape in the sky. I don't know what it is, but then there's lots of things we don't know about that we haven't necessarily found yet. Oh, I do wish the morning would come, Miss Spider said, shivering all over. It won't be long now, James answered. Look, it's getting lighter over there already. And they all sat in silence, watching the sun as it came up slowly over the rim of the horizon for a new day. So that was actually 3 chapters there. We've got through the night. We've escaped from the cloudmen. I hope you're enjoying it. We are getting very near the end of the story. So do come back soon and I'll read you some more. Be happy, everybody. Bye now.